physical discs go away. So, and that probably won't happen until they open up the broadband pipeline, so downloadable games are more are quick. But I think that we're going to see that $60 price point, and maybe even a little more with the next generation of video games.
In the late 80s, there was a great wave of interest in virtual reality, and then it sort of petered out and went away, even though the technology has now gotten better and better, where what then would take, you know, $250,000 worth of gear is now desktop equipment. We've got HD TV. When do you think that there will be a resurgence of interest in that, and when do you see that coming?
You know, I mean, I remember getting really dizzy at virtual reality. And I see the same thing with the Nintendo 3DS. I don't know if you've played it, but that reminds me kind of virtual reality in a way. In fact, it comes with these cards, and the cards, when you kind of snap a picture of them, kind of become almost holographic when you look through that 3D screen. And that also reminded me of virtual reality back in the 90s. So is that coming back? You know, it could be like Infinite Jest at some point, you know, where these games kill us. But we'll have fun dying. So 3D TV without glasses is coming. So maybe there's that. Maybe virtual reality will come back more at that point. Yeah. Yeah.
I really enjoyed your reading.
Thanks.
I don't know if there's like a real answer to this, but hypothetically, what do you think needs to take place within the industry that could change the way the rest of entertainment kind of will finally accept video games as being on par with DVDs and television? I
don't know, man. You know, sometimes I just want to. I have to watch my mouth, but sometimes you know, I think people should get together and protest outside certain magazines, so that this would happen, and it would be considered a medium alongside movie reviews and things like that. But I think it's slowly getting there. So when you play Mass Effect 2. You have a feeling of real narrative. And so with Red Dead Redemption, and even with Undead Nightmare, the ancillary downloadable pack that Rockstar put out, which I thought was just as brilliant as Red Dead. And even, you know, the serials, like the franchises keep trying. So, like, even if you don't like the narrative in, say, Killzone 3, which is a shooter with these kind of squat aliens that you have to kill, it gets, like, with each iteration, it gets just a little better. And I wish the script writing were better in it, but I think it just, like, it kind of incrementally moves forward. But I think so we've already gotten these graphics that are really amazing, and so that can't get that much better. But the writing can get a lot better. So that, like, is the next frontier, I hope, that the writing becomes this kind of really good thing. I mean, it doesn't, you know, I mean, I don't expect to see, like, a David Foster, well, maybe I do, like in an indie games festival, like a David Foster Wallace type game. But in popular games, like action games could stand to have better writing, and I think they will. Yeah.
Just curious as to your thoughts on any standouts in the transmedia film world, whereas, you know, you're seeing all these video games adapted as comic books or movies and vice versa.
So every year at the Game Developers Conference, they come up with a new word for people to hang their hats on. And so last year it was transmedia, this year's gamification. And I think it's kind of all bullshit. But it is a way of talking about it and moving the conversation a bit forward. And there's a chapter in this called "Those Movies Suck." So I don't really think the movies have gotten there, and they won't for a while yet. And that's because they're concerned with branding and licensing and action and not plot and narrative. So back in the 90s, everyone thought that Hollywood and the video game industry would just like kind of have this Vulcan mind meld, and it never really happened, and it still hasn't happened, and it really does need to happen. I'm not sure when it will. Russ, do you want to say?
Well, actually, it's a good lead into my question. It's sort of concerning. When you look at early films, it was very sort of an individual kind of experience sort of produced for a mass audience. And video games, do you still think of them as sort of an individual experience, and do you think that they need to evolve into a larger mass audience type of experience for them to sort of gain there?
Well, so I am a solitary gamer, and I kind of like playing alone and just kind of living in that world. When I was at Sony, and I, you know, with my pals who are here tonight, we would play Soul Calibur a lot together, and that was a really excellent experience, despite the fact that when the executives came by, they would like, why are you playing that and not PlayStation? Because we were playing it on the Dreamcast. And so I'm not the biggest online gamer with friends, but what was that game like Sony did a year ago where there were like 100, you could play over 100 people together? Yeah, yeah. So, and I remember like demoing that game with like 40 journalists in a room or something. We're all playing that, and so I don't know how well that works. I mean, I think it's kind of cool, but I just kind of, it's like Grand Central Station at rush hour sometimes to me. It's like I'm not that good at it, so it daunts me. But like Rush Frushtick from MTV, who's not here, is really good at online gaming, you know, and like Call of Duty and stuff. And I wish I was better at it. So maybe I will get better at it. But so there's all these, you know, you can play solo, you can play with a whole bunch of people. It's kind of cool. Yeah.
Does Hollywood really need to embrace gaming culture? I mean, I didn't see Avatar. It seemed like a silly movie. And like, I don't play silly games that I think is silly. Like, I don't care that Hollywood doesn't embrace it, because if they're making crappy movies, I don't really want them to make crappy games.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Does it need to be like? Do we need to like yell at them and say like, this is art? Like, if I know it's art, you know it's art, then who cares?
So I think that Hollywood could conceivably bring something to the table. They certainly have the distribution mechanism, but there are great writers out there. So, and if you put them with a good game like BioShock, and I don't mean like necessarily Gore Verbinski and his group that are supposed to do that, but you know, there are just a ton of great screenwriters out there that do like that I would think of, like bring someone up from the indie crowd that has some chops that could cross over, and like indie script writing crowd, and I think it could be done really well. You know, I mean, I have that hope. You know, maybe it's a stupid hope. Scott, yeah.
I was fascinated by the early parts of the book, the guys who invented the medium, and the guys who are making games today, they all grew up playing games, so they're kind of like taking what they grew up with, something they knew, and making something that's better. But these early guys who were making something out of nothing, there wasn't such a thing as video games. I know you talked to some of these guys, and some of them were gone.
Yeah.
But, and the guys you talked to, do you get a sense that they were gamers in the same way that we think of that? I mean, or did they become gamers? Did they continue playing games, or was it this one weird streak for them? Because it seems to be a big generational.
Yeah, I mean, I know that. So Ralph Baer, who's 89 years old, who created the Magnavox Odyssey, he does not game really anymore, and like. He even chided me. He said, "Why'd you call the book that? That's not grammatically correct." Yeah. And I said, "Me talk pretty one day." I don't know, like Al Alcorn, or I don't think Ted Dabney plays games anymore. But I think they're interested in the culture of it. So. And Bushnell is back at Atari in some capacity as well. So, but I think that was that time was kind of more of a Wild West time in video games, where everyone was kind of trying all these kinds of things, and there were these teams of 6 or 10 on a game, and there was a bonding that is lost today with 300 or 400 people working on a game. But I mean, I also think it's come full circle where there's that same kind of bonding with indie games, and that same kind of crunch time that almost kills you. Like at the Game Developers Conference, this again, I keep mentioning it because there's so many fascinating things going on. But the guys who made Super Meat Boy, this kind of fun downloadable game, I just nearly died from making that game. They're young and they're tossed into this whirlwind, and one guy had diabetes and he didn't think he would survive. So I think that's kind of what they experienced at Atari, except they were calling the shots there, and they also just were letting things roll. So there's a lot of sex and a lot of drugs and just a lot of lying and cheating and things that will make a good movie at some point. Hey.
I haven't read your book yet, but I'm really looking forward to hearing you talk about it. And I was curious, I'm more familiar with political events and actual war stuff than games. But so I've watched people operating the drones that are dropping bombs on Pakistan and stuff, and it's like a giant game. And of course, the Middle East has often been referred to as a great game. And I wondered if there's much overlap between the actual war strategians and people who develop games, or the people, the recruiting tools, and that sort of overlap between reality and the game.
Well, yeah, and so there was a game called America's Army, which was a recruiting tool for the military, like a first-person shooter that did really well. And I think the guy who worked on that is now the head of Epic Games. So, and you can trace this. I mean, you can kind of trace Ralph Baer, the guy who made the Magnavox Odyssey. The reason that was funded by the Sanders Corporation in New Hampshire is that Sanders had a big contract with the government, and they had hoped to make military simulations through whatever Ralph would create. So yeah, there's kind of been this kind of military aspect through a lot of game creation through the decades. But that's been covered. I didn't really deal with it that much in this book because I think it's been covered well elsewhere. Yeah, there's a lot of it. Yeah, Tara.
What games do you actually enjoy playing, and are there any that you consistently play that are, older?
Yeah, so I started with, I still play Soul Calibur, and when we can get, because all these guys are famous now, I can't get them together at the house anymore, but we get together at my house and we still play Soul Calibur a couple of times a year. And Soul Calibur is this kind of fighting game that I kind of think as mythic, and it just kind of takes me in because there's a kind of this Japanese deep backstory to each of the characters. So I play that, and I like Herman Hulst, so I play through the Killzone games, and I like the Rockstar games a lot. I liked Red Dead Redemption so much that I think it was better than True Grit, a lot better than True Grit. And there's been about a month gap that I haven't played much, but I played. I have the 3DS, and I kind of like the Lego Star Wars game a lot for that one, and Rayman. And the other games I like for it that are a little more hardcore, but they make me dizzy, so I'm not playing those games. But maybe they'll get that right, but they haven't quite yet. But so, and the reason I kind of like those kind of platformy games is that I can move at my pace through it and kind of check out the surroundings.